Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 15 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is mermaids. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking to start with. Mermaids are not scary. Have you seen The Little Mermaid? But I think I might be able to change your mind a little bit on that today. Before I get into the episode, I have a couple things to talk about. Firstly, for those of you that don't know, I am starting to do 2 uploads a week. So this will be the midweek quarantine bonus episode of the podcast. This is going to go up on Thursdays at 8 a.m. And then I will be releasing an episode at my regularly scheduled time on Mondays at 8 a.m. Eastern. Both are Eastern time. You can find it on Spotify, and I upload it to YouTube every week. I know that those have been getting a little bit more hits recently, so you can follow that YouTube page. Other things to talk about. This episode might be a little bit shorter than some of my normal episodes. I've had a lot going on this week, and this just got away from me. I have some personal stuff going on. I recently changed locations yet again during quarantine due to these personal issues. And so this episode might be a little bit shorter because I'm recording it in the in-between times of when the power in our house was out and when it got turned on for a hot second. So if you hear me rushing through it, I'm just worried that the power is going to go out again and my computer is really low on battery. As far as this episode goes, I think it's pretty safe for most listeners. It's definitely okay for younger listeners. I don't think there's anything in this that's going to be super, super duper aggressive. I don't think there's anything in this that's going to really jar people or scare you away. I mean, it's a little disturbing, but I wouldn't say that anybody would have a hard time listening to it. So without further ado, let us get into episode 15. So, mermaids are, as most of us know, they're considered an aquatic creature with the head and torso of a female human, and in modern day lore, the lower body of a fish. Mermaids nowadays are super popular. You find them in a lot of pop culture. You find it in so many different things. One of which is very fascinating is there's all this merch now that just says like, I'm a mermaid or I love mermaids. But like you don't who is it? I think it's Eliza Schlesinger. She's a comedian. She's one of my favorites, and she has a bit where she's like, you don't want to be a mermaid because it's gross and nasty. Like you definitely don't want to be a mermaid and you're just pretending like you do. So nowadays people know mermaids as these like sweet, beautiful creatures that live under the water. Like, for those of you that watch like H2O, Mako Mermaids, I personally love those shows. I think they're really funny, because they're so bad. Those kind of make mermaids out to be these like creatures that have like magical powers, sure, but they're also kind of like a little derpy, and they're not dangerous. Whereas the start of mermaid lore kind of was a lot different. The one that we know the most about, the sort of like, not the first reference, we'll talk about that in a second, but the main reference that we know that sort of gives them the characteristics that we know today. It started as sirens from Greek mythology. So for those of you that are not aware, sirens, and if you'd like me to do an episode on sirens, let me know. Sirens are half bird, half woman creatures, and they're found a lot in the Odyssey. They talk about them for a little bit, and they lured you in with um a song that was like beautiful, and they sort of enticed these men while they were at sea and led them eventually to their death. As Greek mythology kind of started to fall out and Christianity started to come in, they started to be depicted more and more and more with fish tails and less with bird qualities, but still with the characteristics of a siren. So it's kind of believed that like the modern day mermaid came from a siren. Nobody's really sure why people started depicting it with fish limbs rather than bird. Like, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. I think it just makes sense why it would be sailors with a fish versus sailors with a bird. I think that could be part of it. Um, but when you see them in Christian bestiaries, they're always depicted with fishtails, even though technically they're still called sirens, which is fascinating. For those of you that are not aware, a bestiary is basically just like a big book of monsters and creatures. And a lot of times these were made and kind of depicted like, this is what a mermaid is, this is what a siren is, this is what, and you have to watch out for them, or like, this is what a tiger is, like, watch out for it. Um, People originally thought a lot of times that manatees were mermaids, and this is a really funny fact to me, because can you imagine seeing a manatee and being like, wow, that sea cow, it must be a beautiful young lady, I must mate with it. Like, I just don't understand the logic behind that. But part of it is that when you're at sea for that long, you kind of go like you get like cabin fever. Like, they always say, like, you go stir crazy, you get cabin fever, whatever. And so I think that starts to play into their brain a bit, and they start to see things that aren't there. So they saw the manatee and were like, it's a beautiful, buxom woman. The first depicted mermaid that we are aware of in history is depicted in 1000 BC in Assyria. So, like, really, really, really far back in mythology. The goddess of fertility, apologies if I'm saying this incorrectly, Atargatis, let's go with Atargatis, fell in love with a mortal man who was a shepherd. This is like a part of the lore that's there. She unintentionally killed him, and due to that, she flung herself into a lake out of complete shame to sort of kill herself and turn herself into a fish. However, the waters could not conceal her divine beauty, and so it showed her face uh, and the fish body. So Atargatis, there it is, uh, basically was like, I'm so sad that I killed this dude. I can't believe I did that. I love him. Time to go. So she throws herself into a lake with the intent of basically drowning her former self and becoming a fish. And the lake is like, you're too beautiful and we can't do that. So she ends up being the first mermaid that we kind of have logged in history so far. Not too dark, not too terrible, nothing really extreme, but it is the first time that we see like half, woman, half fish. Um, Now, when we get into British folklore, this is where mermaids start to become bad omens. We start to see more of the promiscuous, dangerous side of mer people. And just to be clear, I'm doing this episode mainly on mermaids. There is one or two stories that are about merfolk or mermen. But there is a lot of differences in the lore between mermaids and mermen. For example, mermen usually have normal legs. They just have like webbed fingers and feet. They're normally completely oddly colored from head to foot when you look at them in lore. Whereas the women are always like beautiful human women on the top and fish on the bottom. It's very interesting to see how cultures develop different beauty standards sort of for like different mer people. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I found it really fascinating when I was doing my research that mermaids are normally depicted as these lovely, beautiful creatures, and mermen are always like hideous and ugly. I found that fascinating. For those of you that play D&D, merfolk in like common day lore look like Triton, the Triton race. We have a campaign going with a couple people. My boyfriend is the DM, and I play a Triton bard. So when I was doing research for this and I was looking at like the paintings and stuff of merfolk, I was like, oh my god, that's a Triton. Like, that's exactly what I am. That's a merfolk person, and like I play that, so it was kind of fun for me. Way off topic. British folklore, bad omens, back on track. um the Ballad of Sir Patrick Spens depicts a bunch of mermaids speaking to doomed ships, usually one at a time. In different versions, they say different things. They either say that you will never see land again or that you're close to shore. And for those of you that are intelligent enough to sort of take that in, she's like, you're close to shore, as in like you're gonna die. Um, those that are on the ship that know what she's saying are kind of like, we're close to death. Another sort of myth about them is that mermaids can grow as long as 2,000 feet, which is wild to think of a giant woman, like a giant, literally, that swims under the water. Like, that's really horrifying. I don't really have an explanation for that one, except maybe they saw a whale, right? That makes sense to me. That they saw like a whale and they were like, oh my God, it's a beautiful woman. Like the same way that they thought a manatee was a woman. That makes sense in my brain. I don't. It makes minimal sense. I'm not so sure about that one. Um, in British folklore, they were also depicted to be able to swim in freshwater rivers and lakes. So they were not only in the sea, but also there were mermaids that were in rivers and lakes near the towns. There's a legend that states that this man, he was a rich man. He went to save this woman that he thought was drowning in the nearby lake. His servant stopped him and dragged him away and said, no, 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 please be cautious. That's a mermaid. When this happened, the mermaid started shrieking and screaming at them, saying that she was going to have killed the man if the servant had not stopped him. And then she swims away. So that's really fun to think about. Just like a beautiful woman, and you're like, oh, I'm going to save this hot lady. And then, in that time period, it's like, and then we're going to fuck because, women didn't have rights. And then you're kind of like, oh, I'm stopped a mermaid. That's not real. And then she's like, I was going to literally kill you. Like, that to me is such a funny image and also so scary at the same time. Like, you were just trying to get your jollies off and she was about to kill you. It sort of plays off that thing of like women are promiscuous, and especially with religion back then, a lot of times they talked about how like women are, it's the same thing I talked about in last week, well, I guess not last week's, earlier this week's episode about Ed Gein, where his mother, go back and listen to that episode if you want, it's really dark. um his mother preached to him all the time that women were these terrible, awful creatures that were just about sex, and that they were all, the devil's incarnate. And I feel like a lot of the stories about mermaids are sort of a similar thing, to sort of keep the women of the time oppressed. Not all of these stories are like that, but I think some of them, especially ones like that, where they're using their beauty to lure you in and then like kill you in a sense. I think that this was sort of stating that like women should not be trusted and blah, 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 which I don't really approve of. But now I feel like women have kind of taken back the mermaid, and it's become a really popular icon in, a lot of more feminine culture. Um, so moving on, another really fun, upbeat story, it's not, um, is the Rusalkas, which are Slavic sirens that live in lakes and rivers. So they don't live in the ocean. Um, the Rusalkas are just the restless spirits of the unclean dead. This basically means that they're young women who died a violent or untimely death. Some examples of things like that is if they killed themselves, if they were murdered, if they died like the night before their wedding. Usually they died by drowning, and that's how they ended up being a Rusalka. Um, they appear as these beautiful, beautiful young women with this pale green hair and pale skin. I don't think they have any fish-like qualities in them, which is really fascinating to note. But they dance under the moonlight, and they call to you by name. So that's how you know that you're kind of in a situation that's dangerous. If somebody knows your name and you don't know who they are, and it's at night and they're naked and dancing, like, I just think that that's like a red flag, but maybe that's just me. They call to you, and then once they get you in the water, they drown you. Um, a lot of these stories have to do with the mermaids either drowning people or feasting on their flesh. We'll get into that in a little bit. There are so many depictions, I mean, even nowadays, of mermaids that like eat people, that have these weird like piranha mouths. And I think it's one of those things that's like nowadays, I think most people think of mermaids in the sense of like the Little Mermaid, like Ariel. And that's just not where they originated from. The mythology and the lore is a lot darker than that, and they're vicious and they're scary. And I think it's just interesting to note that we've sort of transformed it into this lovely, beautiful, like childish thing, and it started as like such a dark purpose. It's the same thing with like I did an episode. I guess I'm just plugging episodes in this one. I did an episode on Snow White. For those of you that don't know, I'm doing a mini series within my podcast, so probably like 1 or 2 each season about Grimm's fairy tales, and I'm gonna do the original stories of each. And Snow White is a lot darker than everybody thought it was. It seems like it's a loving little Disney story, and it's not. So I think Little Mermaid kind of has that same sort of vibe to it, and mermaids have that same vibe in general. In Irish folklore, they are depicted as selkies, which I love that name. And for those of you that have played Crystal Chronicles, the Final Fantasy game, used to play all the time with my brothers, like literally all the time. And selkies I always thought were so cool and pretty. This basically means that they're seal women, if that makes sense. The story makes a little more sense as I progress. Basically, what they can do is they can remove their seal skin to reveal their womanly forms and walk onto land. And they're always beautiful and stunning, but they hide their seal skin. If you are a man, you can steal the skin and marry them, provided that you hide the skin and you oil it frequently. So as long as you are taking care of the skin of the seal, you can remain married to this woman. There are a bunch of legends and stories about selkies and men. They usually end in tragedy, where she finds the seal skin and returns to the ocean because the selkie will never stop hunting for their seal skin. So there are stories of like the men marrying the selkie, and they're having this lovely, beautiful life together, and then she finds the seal skin and leaves him and the kids, like all, to go fuck themselves, basically. And it's a lot of time a very tragic story, in that you shouldn't, trap anybody in something like that, which I think is very nice. Scottish folklore tells of the Blue Men of Minch. Minch? Minch? Minch. These are mermen. So this is where we start to get into a different aspect of merfolk, merpeople, whatever you want to call them. Merthays, I don't know. But these are always depicted as men. The Blue Men of Minch inhabit a small little strait, and they would only appear in groups, which is they don't appear alone. The mermaids usually appear alone or with 1 or 2 others. These always appear in a group. They would wave at sailors. They'd be very friendly. And a lot of times the sailors would think that they were people that just needed help or that they were drowning. And only their male human torsos would be popping up above the water. As the sailors would start to get closer, they would notice that they had this weird bluish tint in their skin. It was very unnatural. They were a very blue and green people. But by the time that you noticed that, like, you were close enough for them to grab you, and normally you would be killed. So they would literally feast on your flesh. That's what I wrote it down because I thought that the verbiage was really it strikes a chord. It really makes an image. Feast on your flesh. That is what I read in my research, is that the Men of Minch feast on your flesh. So these people are like, hi, help us, we're drowning, ha ha ha, which I just, oh my god. Can you imagine? You're just like thinking that you're helping somebody, and then you get like eaten. It's just terrible. Going back a little bit to The Little Mermaid, I have some really fun, gross facts about The Little Mermaid. This could be a potential episode idea in the future, so I'm not going to talk too long about it. But if you're interested in me doing a full episode on Hans Christian Andersen's original version of The Little Mermaid, I would love to do that. Let me know if you guys want to do that. I always wait till the end of the podcast. I always plug, my email and my Instagram so that you guys know how to reach me. Let me know if you think that would be an interesting episode to do, because I think it could be. So in this original story, The Little Mermaid, there is like a bloodbath ritual that has to happen. So instead of her, it's like the same basic story up until that point. She talks to the sea witch. The sea witch is like, yeah, here are your feet, whatever. But part of the lore of this is that mermaids and merfolk in this case don't have souls, so they cannot go to heaven when they die. So you have to marry a land dweller to get a soul, right? So she falls in love with this land dweller that does not love her back. Um, and her sisters sell their hair to the sea witch to get her a magical dagger. The way that the dagger works is that she has to stab her lover in the heart and then let the blood soak over her feet. So she has to give herself a little pedicure, like a little foot soak, but in his blood. When she does this, her tail will grow back, he will be dead, and she can go back into the ocean and be with her siblings. She cannot do it. She can't bring herself to stab him. She's like, I can't participate in this ritual. And then the angels, there's like angels that kind of like come down and they're like, hey, if you do some really good deeds on planet Earth for like a couple years or whatever, we'll maybe let you up into heaven. And like, she's like, dope. And like, that's kind of the end. Also another thing in this story that they add is that they talk about how these sailor corpses, like if you die and they throw your body overboard, or like if the ship crashes and your body floats to the bottom, sailor corpses can be reanimated as zombies. You can be a zombie. That is so cool. So like you die as a sailor and you float to the bottom of the ocean, and then, King Triton or who the fuck ever is just like, rise, rise, and like reanimates your body. So you're like a zombie. And the thing about the zombies in this is that they remember nothing about their life on land at all. These are the couple stories that I wanted to pluck out because I thought that they were, particularly grotesque or dark. There are tons of other stories about, I think it's in Japanese folklore. There is a form of a mermaid, and if you eat her flesh, you can live forever. There's bunches of mermaids and merpeople in Hindu, in Babylonian myths and stuff like that. There's all sorts of mythology that you can look up about mermaids. And a lot of times they're not depicted this horribly. In Chinese culture, a lot of times they are, and in Korean, a lot of times they're depicted as helpless. And if you help them, they give you gifts. Um, a lot of times they help with medicine. In some myths, they give people the gift of like, this is how you heal your culture. It really depends. I'm a horror podcast. I'm choosing to choose to talk about, wow, the stories that are a little bit darker, a little bit weirder. But there are a lot of lighthearted stories about mermaids. It's just for the most part where they came from is not always like that. Another fun thing to note is that mermaids have always been like a super big part of culture, so much so that people were pretending to find quote unquote mermaids. P.T. Barnum, oh my God, I'm stuttering so badly today. I'm so sorry. Is a prime example of that. He had what he called a Fiji mermaid. Obviously it was a fake mermaid. If you know anything about P.T. Barnum, he was a terrible, awful human being that exploited people and their differences in order to turn a profit. He was not a good guy. He didn't do much that was great. And he had what he called his Fiji mermaid. It was probably just an orangutan like baby that died that was like sewn to a salmon. And it's like you can clearly see like it's sewn. Like it's not like meshed together well or whatever. But people would pay so much money to go see it. And it was part of his like brand. It became a really popular thing with his circus. Um, but a lot of people would do this where they'd say, I have, a mermaid. And it was just a lot of like monkeys that were sewn to like fish, which is a very weird concept. But at the time, you couldn't Google a picture of it. So there was no way of you knowing that it was a hoax, that it was fake. You had to go and see it in person to know that it wasn't real. And then you get to the point where you don't trust P.T. Barnum, and that's totally valid and acceptable, considering what he did. There are still so many more stories of mermaids that have persisted even to today. Um, A lot of times, I don't know where I have this image from. I'm not sure what film it's from or what TV show. I have this picture of like a woman, and then she like unhinges her mouth, and she's got like piranha teeth, and she like eats people. And like I don't know where that came from because I have no idea if that was ever a thing. But in my head, that is a way that they've been depicted. Um, I mean, they've been depicted in Disney as these lovely, beautiful creatures that are sunning and sing and love. In Harry Potter, they're a little bit more animalistic. If you've read or seen Goblet of Fire, there's that whole section where he goes down under the water, and the mermaids like sing a song, and the merfolk that are in that are just a little bit more horrifying. Just overall, are just a little scarier. I believe in Percy Jackson, they reference the sirens, and I think the sirens in that are more fish-like than bird-like, but don't quote me on that because I don't remember. Um, they've even been depicted in brand deals, like fucking Starbucks's symbol is a mermaid with her legs open, like mermaids are just such a part of pop culture today, and they're such a huge part of modern day culture. Despite them coming from this really dark, terrible place, they were seen as like bad omens. Like if you were to, let's say you saw a mermaid in the ocean one day, that would be considered a bad omen. There might have been a storm that was going to brew. Your ship might crash. Like it was bad. They were these temptresses that would like drown you alive, and they wanted your blood, and they wanted to kill you. A lot of times, in some cultures, they were depicted as like witches. And so they had all these magic spells that they would use to sort of like lure you in. And um, now it's like they're just pretty, and you swim underwater, and you have pretty hair and bras, and your body's snatched. Like, cool, I guess. They're also like nowadays you don't really hear about like mermen or merfolk. That's not as much of a thing as it is like mermaids in particular. That's all I really have today to talk about as far as the topic goes. Remember, I'm uploading every Thursday at 8 a.m. and every Monday at 8 a.m. So there will be 2 episodes a week. Let me know if you want me to upload this one a little bit later in the week, or if you want it earlier, or if you want to on the same day. I don't really know. I thought that this would be a good one because then you have an episode for the weekend and an episode for the week. So let me know if this schedule is working out for you guys. I'm trying to pump out as much content as possible. The prototypes of merch have been ordered, so they are on the way. We should be getting those in a couple weeks, which means that you'll start seeing pictures of those and stuff go up on my social media. My Instagram is at Whispers From Below. No spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. And the email is the same thing, whispersfrombelow@gmail.com. No spaces, no capitals, no underscores, no nothing. I'm working on currently trying to get I'm currently trying to get a website uploaded and set up so that you guys can send me questions directly through there as well. I love hearing back from you guys. I've gotten a couple questions from people, a couple comments, and I really love talking to you guys and reaching out. So be sure to either DM me on Instagram or send me an email. Once I get the website up and running, I'll definitely put a link to it on my Instagram, and I'll probably talk about it in the most recent episode to that. So I'll keep you guys updated with that. As far as anything else goes, I just have one thing to ask of you, and I'm going to ask this at the end of every episode. Please, if you really like this podcast and you really want to see it go far like I do, please just share this podcast. Maybe not this episode. Maybe pick an episode that was your favorite. I know that not every episode is for every person, and that's totally okay. That's the point of the podcast. Last week's was a kind of a dark episode, so like this week is a little bit brighter because I want to make sure that I am pumping out content that a lot of people can view and love. I would love if you guys would share this on social media. Please tag me in it, share an episode, talk about it. Even if you just send it to one friend or you talk to one friend via, word of mouth, and you just say, hey, I think you'd really like this podcast. Take a listen. The more listeners I can get, the more content I can put out, the bigger this gets, the more stuff I can do for you guys. And I really want this to take off. I'm loving doing this. I'm so passionate about it. And I just want this to be the most amazing thing that I can do So please, if you could, just share it, tag the Instagram. You can even tag me. You can find me on social media pretty easily. Um, please, 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 at least share this with one person. If you share this with one person every time you listen to an episode, right now I don't have that many listeners, but that could double my listeners and then triple it. And I would just absolutely love that. So, remember, mermaids like to eat people. It would not be fun to be a mermaid. It's gross and salty, and it's just not it. And stay safe and wash your hands and be clean, please.